nearly time for the drinks trolley.
Yeah.
Because it's that time of the day. What are you offering today from your luxury trolley?
Well, a very nice one, and one very apt for us, I thought. It's by Lost and Grounded. It's a light lager, so it's only 3.4%.
Oh, useful.
But it's called Sign of the Times.
Sign of the Times.
Yeah.
Yes.
As in the Prince song.
Yeah, it's
As
very
in the
good.
Prince song.
I like
Very
that.
good. I like that, and I like the Prince song as well. So
Yeah.
we'll use one of those. Thank you very much indeed. Today's confession comes from Luke, and you'll find out why. Father Simon and the Generously Forgiving Collective. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, or more specifically, a little over 10 years ago at our local leisure centre, we had hired out the large main hall. There was a huge bouncy castle. There were lots of safety ropes strapped to young children ascending the climbing wall. There were balls flying around and rackets being swung. There was a table filled with snacks and jugs of orange squash, and it was incredibly loud. Bursting with energy from young kids running around and randomly shouting with excitement, we were having a joint birthday party. It was our twin daughter's 6th birthday. They shared their December birthday with 2 other pupils in their school class, and their mums had arranged a class-wide birthday event. My 2 girls, who we will call R2-D2 and C-3PO, we're having a great time running and climbing and bouncing and screaming like their classmates. I'm sure Matt will feel my pain.
Yes.
We all love our own kids. Of course we do. Other people's kids?
Oh, no.
Not so much. There were 2 amazing kids in that hall that day and another 28 that, well, weren't as quite amazing in my eyes. Within this class of 30 were 4 rather loud, rather overly energetic boys who were running and screaming, ducking and diving between people with their badminton rackets for substitute machine guns. I was stood at the table pouring some squash. As I turned with my freshly filled beaker, I fell over one of these boys. The squash ended up all over the boy's t-shirt. There was a loud shout, followed by crying, and I found myself lying on the hall floor, looking up at the ceiling with everyone's eyes staring at me. My wonderful wife, who we will call Leia, came rushing over, her face full of concern, her hair in a top knot.
Oh, yeah.
I'm fine, I told her, as I tried to laugh off all the attention and get up. As I stood, though, it quickly became obvious that I had twisted my ankle. I called over my friend, who we will call Han, and he used his rugby-muscled physique to get me up and standing. It was clear that I was not in a good way. After discussions between Leia, Han and myself, it was decided that I should go to A&E. It was only a few minutes' drive from the leisure centre, and I could get my ankle looked at there. I could perhaps borrow some crutches to help get me around for a few days, and I left Leia and all the other parents attending the party and hobbled out from the leisure centre hall, my arm around Han, taking the weight off my injured ankle. If you could have seen CCTV footage of me leaving the leisure centre that day, you would have seen Luke with his arm around Han hobbling out and through the leisure centre doors. You would see them turn right towards the car park, and then you would see Luke detach and start walking in a regular, uninjured way over to Han's car. You see, Father Simon, today was December the 19th, 2015. To most, this date will be meaningless. But to Han and myself and to any other Star Wars fan, this day was tremendous. The new Star Wars film, The Force Awakens, was released. For the first time since we were kids in the 80s, the real Han, Luke and Leia would be back up together, up on the big screen fighting the bad guys once more. It was a huge deal. Once we realised that the big birthday bash for my dear little R2-D2 and C-3PO would be clashing with the release of the new Star Wars film, a cunning plan had been created. I'd always fancied myself as a bit of a thespian, and this had been my opportunity to shine. Han and I had planned it and had performed it just like Kaiser Sose in The Usual Suspects.
Yes!
We got into the car and headed off to the cinema, which was not too far away. There we reunited with our childhood screen heroes and enjoyed a galactic adventure once again. We then popped over to TGI Fridays, had food and geeked out discussing the return of our favourite movie franchise. I would like to ask forgiveness for my sin, Father Simon. In my defence, this was an extremely special occasion. Not my daughter's birthdays, rather my reunion with my childhood heroes.
Yes.
When I returned home that evening, I walked in with a limp Yes, it was back. I blamed my missing hours on the busy A&E department. You know what it's like. After only a day or two, my uncle made a miraculous recovery. R2-D2 and C-3PO and all their friends had a great time at their party. Leia had a great time chatting with all the other mums and watching her kids having lots of fun. Luke and Han had a great time experiencing the new Star Wars film.
Yes.
And all was well and peaceful in the galaxy. And that's how Luke finishes his tale.
Okay, no, good. Yes, that's how it ended.
Yeah, that is how it ends, with a happy ending.
Yes.
Although I sense trouble from the...
In the Force.
Yes, in the Force. The Force is disturbed and it's coming from the pub. Suze, you go first.
There is trouble in the Force over here. Now, I quite like a Star Wars film. I understand that the pull of the Force was strong for his geeky little heart to go and watch that film as soon as he could. But, you know, if that's what you want to do, why book the birthday party for the same day as
I don't think he'd realised,
the
really.
party? Well, if he was that big of a fan, he would have, wouldn't he? And he wouldn't have made sure they clashed. Also, I'm not sure poor Leia was quite happy and it was as delightful as he described it, in that she enjoyed chatting to the mums. Parties are stressful. And I can't believe you just abandoned her. And also, it wasn't just to see the film. You went and had dinner and had a big chat about it afterwards.
Yes.
So maybe if it was just the film, maybe I could have forgiven you, but you definitely joined the dark side, Luke, and I'm afraid I cannot forgive.
Brother Matthew.
Well, I'm definitely going to forgive. A number of reasons. Number one, I'm a massive Star Wars fan as well, and I remember when those movies came out, I was desperate to go and see them. So, yes, I'm definitely going to forgive for that.
Wouldn't you run away from your own
I
child's
run away
birthday
from my
party?
child. But here's my point about the birthday party. Whose idea was it to have 4 kids having their birthday party at the same time? That's a recipe for disaster. No one wants to be in that one. Leia seemed to be handling it all very well. I thought she did an excellent job, and probably better off with Luke and Han out of the picture.
You think?
I think so. I think she'd have applauded them as well. So for all those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
Well, it's the people's verdict, please. It's divided in-house, as you might have realised. Do you forgive Luke for abandoning his children? 61054. But just before the news, a confession from Luke, who feigned an injury to leave his daughter's birthday party, saying he was going to A&E, but actually he was going to Star Wars, The Force Awakens. Then he went to TGI Fridays, and then he went home. Oh, and look, my limp is back. Anyway, it's all been revealed as a great big con. Luke says all was peaceful in the valley, but does he get forgiveness?
Well, Kerry in Swansea says not forgiven. I would feel completely betrayed if I was Leia. She was left to look after the kids while her husband, who obviously is a child himself, went out to the cinemas to see some kids' sci-fi film. I've never understood the Star Wars hype, frankly. Well, yes. Tim from Sutton Coldfield says forgiven. I'm sure the kids would have had a great time regardless, despite the fact that Dad was away for so long. He could have returned and uttered the immortal line, I am your father.
Very good.
And Hannah in Torbay says totally forgiven, except why would such a Star Wars fan marry Luke to Leia?
I think he was, fair point. I think he was just going with the famous characters.
He was, wasn't he?
Just to help us through.
Fair enough.
Anyway, thank you very much indeed for the verdicts. Thank you for the confessions. A new podcast on Friday. And if you fancy getting your confession on, you send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Meantime, just going to have a little sharpener.
Why not?
Before the confession. What's our sharpener today, Suze?
Well, I've gone for a rosé from South Australia. It's called Rainbow Juice. It's got a rainbow on the label. It's naturally produced, so it's unfiltered, slightly cloudy, but very tasty.
Excellent. Can I have a small glass later?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Today's confession comes from Seaman Steve. And we're on the waters here.
Yes.
To the holy, rolling, forgiving family of redemption,
Wow.
says Steve. My tale hails from the turn of the century. I had been invited by my father, a keen sailor, to Cows Week to act as muscle, pulling on ropes, they call them sheets for some reason, as you might know, on boats, at the annual yachting regatta, one of the longest running regattas in the world. It is prestigious, it is famous, it has very high standards.
I'll bet it does.
It is a celebration with races and drinking and general hullabaloo. The influx of boats meant that our boat, which we were staying on, was moored at the end of a dock alongside 4 other large sailing yachts stretching out into the harbour. This meant that in order to get ashore, to relieve our thirst after a hard day's racing, we had to walk over the other 4 boats to get to the dock.
Okay. Right.
Now, the thing about Cows Week is that it is filled with the type of blokes, and it is mostly blokes, called Tarquin, Archibald, Monty and Bertie. You get the idea.
Yep, I do.
More fanars and pastel polo shirts that you can shake a stick at. He's playing the class war card here,
Good for him.
Steve.
Yeah.
I'm with you there.
And one evening, after being mocked for my lack of suitable private schooling, career in banking and general social class inferiority, my patience broke and I decided a bit of revenge was called for. The next evening, I was ready, and after another visit to the pub and further personal derision, enacted my plan on returning back to base. I think I should probably say that you should probably not do what Steve does.
Okay, understood.
yeah.
So that's why we're reading this out, so that you can sit in judgment.
Yeah.
Learn.
As we crossed the boats to get to our beds, I placed a few random nuts and bolts on their decks. Silently, ninja style, no one noticed. A few bolts here, a few nuts there. Intriguing.
Yes.
I went to sleep, sniggering slightly, trying to ignore the loud snoring from my father. The next morning, we came up on deck to the glorious sight of a flock of pastel Tarquins high in the mast, safely secured, Sister Susie, desperately searching for the source of the missing nuts and bolts that they had found on deck that morning. The implications for a boat's safety is profound. Might the mast be suspect? Might it fall or snap or sag? We quietly slipped our moorings and headed out to our first race, listening to a chorus of plaintive "Flam, I say, poor show, steady on, old chap. What would matron say? Come back."
Matron, wow.
Matron.
Yeah, well, they would, wouldn't they? Yeah.
Apparently so.
They absolutely would.
So, I guess that's quite ingenious. Anyway, so I seek forgiveness, not from the Tarquins, none of whom were harmed, although one harness did look a little tight, who are no doubt all high-flying bankers now with their own fleet of yachts. Nor from my crewmates who woke to this strange sight and were visibly confused, but to the race organisers who were forced to radio around and find out what had happened to the 4 delayed boats and so were made to do extra work. Yours in not too hopeful expectation of forgiveness, Seaman Steve. Well, I mean, I can see I think that's quite ingenious.
Yes.
Just with a handful of nuts and bolts, he didn't do any damage, but he made them think the damage had been done. Intriguing. Maybe it's clever enough to get past Susie. I don't know. Let's check in.
Well, God, it sounds like a lot of fun there. I'll say that. And I don't mind a Tarquin or a Monty or as much as Matt does. So I was kind of with him there, but he's right, no one got injured. There wasn't actually any damage done to the yachts. They weren't sunk, but it was a bit of a waste of time, all for the reason that you don't like a Tarquin or a Monty. And I just feel like, I just can't forgive you because you just wasted everybody's time.
Okay, well, I know what Matt's going to say, so let's get on with it.
Yeah, I'm going to forgive. Bit of class war, always up for some of that. Monty and Jonty, all of that lot. It was, as you say, it was ingenious, wasn't he? Didn't do any harm, did he? But he was playing mind games. That's what he did, mind games with them. And they didn't know what had hit them, did they? Didn't teach them that at Eton. But maybe if you checked your yacht beforehand, Monty and Jonty, then you wouldn't have had any trouble. But you didn't, because you were going on about banking and having your pastel shirt and no socks,
even if you'd have checked
and your
it,
private education and your daddy's yacht. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
Doesn't matter how many times they check the yacht, because
because they should have checked the yacht, shouldn't they? Good point.
No.
Everyone's in
No, but
agreement
even
again.
if you checked it,
because they should have
saw
checked
some
it,
new
shouldn't
bolts,
they?
you'd have to
Susie
check
agrees
again.
with me as well.
Matt's
Agreeing.
gone into taxi
Mind
driver
games.
mode.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the people's verdict. Please do you forgive Seaman Steve? 61054. First word is Simon. A long time ago, just before the 6 o'clock news, we had a confession from Seaman Steve, all about a regatta. In fact, it was Cows Week. The fact that he wasn't posh enough, and so he distributed a few random nuts and bolts on other boats to make them think that their masts were about to fall down. He didn't do any damage. He just made them think that there was damage. Anyway, lots of pastel Tarquins involved. The people's verdict is in.
Forgiven, says Josh in Epsom. They sounded like posh snobs. Brought them down a peg or two, and no one got hurt. Win-win in my book. Sarah from Devon. I completely forgive, purely for Simon's snooty accent making an appearance. Obviously, I also agree entirely with Matt. And Sean in Taunton says, complete forgiveness for Seaman Steve here. They should have considered it a little anchor management exercise.
Did you just select people who agreed with you on that one?
Yes, I did.
That's a very,
Good for
very
me.
unusual tactic. What would matron say? If you have a confession, please send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. And very, very good news is that it's time for the drinks trolley. As Susie suggests that we take advantage of what today, Suze?
I've gone with a very delicious one from Left-Handed Giant. It's called Light It Up. It's a hazy pale ale that's been brewed to celebrate the Bristol Light Festival, which starts tomorrow. It's juicy and tasty, and Matt will be pleased to know that it's a mix of Citra, Mosaic and Eldorado hops.
Oh, nice.
Eldorado hops.
Yeah.
Very good. A lot of Bristol alcohol gets its way on to the drinks trolley.
I wonder why that is.
I don't know. Today's confession comes from Steve, as you're about to find out. Simon, Matt, Holly, Susie and all the team. My name is Steve and I am a science teacher. My career has been based firmly on solid evidence and fact. I am extremely sceptical, therefore... What do you say, oh dear?
Well, it's just going to go in a bad way, isn't
I am
it?
extremely sceptical, therefore, of the paranormal and so-called psychic events. Obviously, this is because the scientific evidence for these phenomena is non-existent. I started my career at a new school in Wigan, and one of the highlights of the year was the school trip abroad. This alternated one year in France and the next in Germany. I was thrilled, therefore, to be invited as part of the staff team to the next trip to Germany. The places in which we stayed had been used year in, year out, and we were well known to the head of foreign languages who organised the trips. In Germany, we stayed at a hotel in the small town of St. Gorhausen, which is beautifully situated on the banks of the Rhine. The hotel was just a short walk from the town centre. So after the evening meal, the students were allowed to walk into town, as this was an ideal opportunity for them to buy some souvenirs from the selection of shops. They were given a time deadline, with the only other restriction being that they were not allowed to go on the ferry across to the other side of the Rhine. Obviously, we had staff on patrol in the town, and on this particular day, myself and another relatively new member of staff, called Ross, decided to station ourselves at the ferry terminal. We chose a spot where we were unable to be seen by anyone who came off the ferry. During our vigil, we did notice several of our boys getting off the ferry. However, we did not want to make a scene, so decided that we would talk to the boys once we were back at the hotel. One of the good things about this hotel was that the student rooms all opened onto a central corridor where most of the students gathered during the evening. When we arrived back at the hotel, we noticed the boys involved in the incident were playing cards around a table, and suddenly an idea popped into my head. I told Ross to back me up on whatever I said, and I had a plan involving the lads we'd seen on the ferry to teach them a lesson. I said to them, have you ever had your fortune told? True to form, Ross went overboard, telling the lads that I was really good. One of the boys then inquired if I could tell fortunes with playing cards. Ross said this was possible, and with the fact that I had told the fortunes of several staff in the staff room, which he said had been truly unbelievable, the lads looked at each other somewhat sceptically, but were more than willing to give it a go, probably thinking that this would be fun to get one over on a member of staff. So I shuffled the pack and asked them to cut the pack. Everyone gathered round once word got around that Mr. G was fortune-telling. I have to admit that I made the story up to match the revealing of the cards, saying like, I do not know until I turn over the first card whether I'm going to talk about the past, the far past, the near past, or the future, or the present. The first card was a low number, so I said this was such a small number, we were talking of the immediate past. The next card was a club, so I said this signified a trip, possibly a trip across water.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, embellishing my storytelling by saying that this would probably have been us crossing the channel a couple of days ago. But with the next card, I stated that something was odd, as it was signifying a trip within the last 24 hours. By this time, the lads were starting to give nervous glances to each other. The next card signified that something was not quite right. A rule had been broken, or someone had done something that they would later regret. By this time, quite an audience had gathered, and you could hear a pin drop as I turned over each card. However, before the next card could be turned over, two of the lads stood up shouting, "Don't turn over the next card! Don't turn over the next card!" At this point, Ross had to leave quickly as he'd wet himself. He was laughing so much. The next thing was an outpouring from all of the lads saying that, yes, they'd been across the Rhine on the ferry, they visited several shops. And their confession told us everything that they had got up to on the other side of the river. They were obviously grounded for the rest of the trip, but a consequence of what had happened I had not foreseen. With so many students watching from the corridor, not only had I been given the persona of a fortune teller, but obviously when we got back to school, the story was embellished by the students with each telling. And for several years, I had the reputation of having psychic ability. Anything that happened in school had the immediate expression, "Better tell Mr. G, except he knows already what you've done." Collecting homework was never a problem, as students quite often owned up immediately. As I would already have foreseen with my psychic ability, that those who had failed to complete the tasks had a very useful skill for a teacher. Sad to say this was a fraud, however, on my part. These lads convinced themselves that I had some form of unique ability in the paranormal, and it may even have remained with them long after they left the school, which is another reason for my shame. Forgiveness is sought, Holy Father. Best wishes from Steve. So I think that's a very interesting tale.
It is, yes, very good.
He didn't ask to become a psychic. He could have stopped being known as a psychic, of course. However, Susie, what do you say?
Well, I feel like, maybe you could have applied to be at Hogwarts with that CV that you had there. Just, it was very funny. I enjoyed the tale. It did make me laugh. But isn't it just lying? And that's just, teaching bad example for the students, I think. And for that reason, I'm sorry, Teacher Steve, but I can't forgive you.
He's using all the tools in his toolbox, I think, Brother Matthew.
Yes, ingenious, wasn't it? Because he's not just going to confront them, he's going to make the cards make them think that something from the other side is telling him what's going on. I love it. Excellent. And also it worked out later for him in life with the everyone's handing in the homework because they all think he's in contact with whatever it is. And why did they all confess? If you stuck to your guns, lads, you'd have been fine. But you're obviously a little bit thick because you think your science teacher is in contact with the other side, when that's obviously not the case. So, definitely forgiven. Lie to the kids all you like, because they're all a bit thick.
61054, first word is Simon. Just before the news, though, a top confession from Teacher Steve. The story of a science teacher who pretended to be able to be a card-reading fortune teller just to put some of his pupils, while they were off on a foreign trip, back where they needed to be because they had broken the rules. Anyway, the people's verdict is in.
Tim from Sutton Coldfield says, definitely forgiven. Genius. Although this is a lie, this one can only have done good, as all the pupils were encouraged to be truthful. What harm can possibly have been done here? A science teacher who only recognises physical facts, but was brilliant with the paranormal. Very clever indeed. Josh in Byfleet, forgiven. Hilarious confession. As Matt says, I'm surprised the kids didn't see through him. They obviously weren't very bright. And Lauren says, forgiven. As a teacher myself, I wish I'd done this trick when I realised kids were sneaking out late on the school trip years ago. Genius.
Yes, I think school trips will have plenty of confessions. If you have one for us, please share it. confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.
Did you say?
I said, yeah, he still does, actually. He went, oh, sorry, mate, I didn't realise.
Oh,
I hadn't looked up.
Brilliant.
Anyway, that was fun.
Well done.
Got a big tip.
Yeah, I'll bet.
What did you remove from the trolley there, Suze?
I've got a lovely West Coast Pale Ale just for you from Polly's Brew Company in North Wales called Little Petal.
Yes.
5.2%. It's crisp, it's clean, and some classic hops for Matt here, Cascade and Simcoe.
Simcoe hops.
Who could ask for more?
Yeah,
I get all my shopping at Simcoe.
Simcoe,
yeah.
yes.
Today's confession comes from Selhurst Park Pete.
Oh.
That's how it's signed. Dear the Most Reverend Father Simon, in the collection of monastic forgivulation, Not a word, but anyway, not bad. I've just listened to the Waitrose supermarket car park confession, and it struck a chord anchored deep inside my memory. A memory that has cast an eternal shadow of shame over my family for decades. And now it's the time to release this heavy burden. It's not just that I live in Ashford and know that Waitrose well, but the related topic of discussion is the act of clumsiness perpetuated by my mother, who, for the benefit of this feature, we will call Eileen. I would like to add that all players in this dark episode are now departed from this mortal coil, and I suspect the victims may have found themselves caught up in the aftermath, will either have hit the celestial plane or to be too old to care.
Okay,
you see,
right.
This took place around the very early 80s when I was still knee-high to a grasshopper. The setting for this is South London in the Croydon-ish area. So probably Croydon.
Yeah.
My parents were good sorts, fine and upright folk who led a blameless, hard-working post-war life and brought up their family with the firm intent of installing an honesty is the best policy in us young'uns. Home was a neat semi in the suburbs with my mum as a proud housewife. They liked routine, did Eileen and my dad, Bill. One regular event was the weekly shopping ritual, which would entail a Friday evening trip to the local supermarket to gather the meat, potatoes, vegetables and Angel Delight, because that's what we ate, to feed the family for the following week. Sainsbury's in Norbury was the usual beneficiary of my dad's hard-earned cash, so off they would go on a weekly sort of hunter-gatherer supermarket date kind of ritual. Why they insisted on going to Norbury was never fully explained because we didn't live anywhere near Norbury. But anyway, an event of great excitement then occurred when a rival supermarket chain announced that they were opening a large store much closer to where we lived, and its arrival was met with much excitement and anticipation. The great day arrived and off they went, full of eager expectation, heading off to the promised land in the family Mark I Escort. When they returned to the house with the largesse, the expected tales of bright lights and exotic aisles full of baby sham and Fray Bentos pies did not materialise. Mum was quiet and flustered. Dad was somewhat agitated with a look of burden in his eye. They indeed did go to the new supermarket, which sat in a location known for its undulating terrain and with its car park on a definite gradient.
Oh, no.
They indeed went into the shop and stared with wonder at the new displays, bright fluorescent lights and special offers on the Black Forest Gatto. But here the situation literally went downhill. This, Father Simon, is where the mayhem starts. The trolley was pushed to the car and duly unloaded, whilst Dad was putting on his driving gloves, ready for the journey home. Because that's what we did.
Yeah, we did.
He asked Mum to return the trolley to the line in the car park. The evening was dark and misty and the car park large. Lighting in those days was not what it is now. I'm not quite sure that works. Mum, bless her, took the trolley back to the long conga line of about 100 trolleys, waiting patiently to be returned to the shop, and pushed the trolley into the one at the end of the line the way you do. Unfortunately, she must have pushed a bit too hard as they started to move imperceptibly at first, but then picked up a lot of speed. What she had done is dislodge a huge snake of trolleys that was stored at the top of a hill on a Friday night in a busy car park in South London. The trolley line actually curled and span whilst gaining more speed and disappeared in almost silence into the mist like an aberration from Hades itself, heading straight for the middle of the car park. Fortunately, this was out of sight due to the mist, as was the rather hasty escape of that 1100cc Escort of ours. But on behalf of my mother, I would like to sincerely apologise to anyone caught up in the great supermarket trolley disaster of South London, particularly the following. There are probably more, but this is what I discovered. The Mark I Fiesta that lost a wing mirror, the two Morris Marinas that were scratched and scuffed, the Datsun Cherry that was dented, the Vauxhall Victor with a broken light, and the Rover SD1, is that? Anyway, which now featured 2 chipped doors. To any children with recurring nightmares of giant metal snakes appearing out of the mist, I must profoundly apologise. Mum was banned for life from returning trolleys at supermarkets, and they immediately returned to the safe enclosure of Sainsbury's in Norbury. On a Friday night, Stephen Fry would be so pleased.
Yes.
They wouldn't be recognised or pictured on any posters near the shop. All the best. Selhurst Park, Pete. Well, you can imagine how that's going to happen. It's downhill all the way, and there's a big line of trolleys, just a slight push, and there's absolute chaos. I don't know what's going on there.
Wow, it's all happening.
Yeah, basically the confessions bed didn't want to stop.
Did it not?
No, it's incredible. Sister
Wow.
Suze, what do you say to Selhurst Park, Pete?
Oh, I really feel for his mum here. I can't imagine that scene. Who builds a car park on a hill when there's trolleys?
Yes.
And it's just a disaster. And I really want to forgive, but I feel like there's too many cars that were damaged, and so I'm afraid I'm gonna have to say not forgiven, really. But terrible.
Brother Matthew.
I am going to forgive. What a little trip to the 80s that was, with the Datsun Cherries and the Vauxhall Vivas.
Angel
Great
Delight
memories.
as well.
All of
Yeah.
those. Frey Bentos. Yes, no, I definitely forgive. I mean, as Susie says, who builds a car park on a hill? There's a problem. I mean, there's no planning. And whose fault is that? It's the supermarket's fault. And the system for putting a car park on a hill, it makes no sense, particularly when you've got trolleys. I'm absolutely in clumsy Eileen's corner on this one. So, yes, definitely forgiven.
So forgiveness from Matt, no forgiveness from Suze. That's the way it normally goes. However, the people's verdict is what we need. Do you forgive, Pete? 61054. And the people's verdict is in. Here we go.
Barry in Brighton says, absolutely forgiven. Why on slanted earth was the frontmost trolley not attached to a chain? Surely that's not a new invention. Sharon in Sheffield, forgiven. Oh, wow, all those classic cars mentioned in one conversation. Wonder how many people were thinking their car was involved. Thanks for the blast from the past. And Stephanie in Bushy says, definitely forgiven. It could happen to anyone, and it did to me. Not in Croydon, but in Praia de Luz in Portugal, when my trolley, fully loaded with many bottles of excellent Portuguese wine, escaped from me and hurtled down the hill to crash into the side door of a very cross Dutch lady's car.
I mean, you would be cross,
Yes,
wouldn't
you would, a little. Yeah, no, fair enough.
All that damage had been caused. Okay, very good. Thank you for all the verdicts that came in. Thank you for the confessions. You sent yours to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. There is a brand new Confessions podcast. It's going to be with you by tomorrow.